Hello there, my name is Jack Burgess. I've been modeling the Yosemite Valley Railroad for about 50 years now. I finished my layout in 2011, and people often ask, now what am I doing? Well, I've always been a builder. A lot of people operate their layouts once they get them finished. I do not operate my layout. I have visitors operate it occasionally. What I do is I like to build things. I've got about 100 structures on my layout, all scratch built. The cars, maybe 25% are scratch built cars. Many years ago, Model Railroader had an article about a person that had modeled every caboose on the Baltimore and Ohio Railroad. And at that time, I was just getting back into the hobby, and I was very impressed with a picture of 300 cabooses that he had built. And at that time, when I decided to model the YV, I decided I wanted to build every boxcar, every flat car, every maintenance away car, every engine, every caboose that the YV had. I have accomplished some of those. I have all the locomotives, all the cabooses. 2 cars away from having all the flat cars. 1 more car and I'll have all the maintenance away cars. So that's what I enjoy of the hobby. I also enjoy the challenges of even taking on more difficult projects. What I'd like people to get out of this talk is how to make the most of the time that you have to model. I think if you can even spend a few, maybe 15, 30 minutes a day on the hobby and make some progress, that will feed back into both enjoyment and make you want to do more. And the more that you can get done, I think the more you get out of the hobby. So that's the goal. I have a friend that set aside 30 minutes each day, I think only Monday through Fridays, right after dinner and before they sat down to watch TV together. And he got a lot of buildings built, all scratch built, all Yosemite Valley Railroad models, and did a really, really good job on them. So that's the kind of techniques and things I want to talk about today. This is my shop. It's in a spare bedroom, about 11 feet square, I think. For a long time I had a shop in the layout room, which in California is called a garage. And it was about 6 feet by 11. I had all the stuff I needed at that time and was fine, except that it was very cold in the winter and very hot during the summer. After our last adult child moved out of our house, my wife said, why don't you move your shop into a spare bedroom? So this is, or was, a bedroom. I built all the furniture myself, laid it all out and figured out what I wanted. It's worked out very well. I've made very few changes over the years, mainly adding more and more tools. This is my main work area. This is a self-healing cutting mat, which works out very well. You can cut right on it with an X-Acto knife. It will last forever, except that if you spill paint thinner on it, pretty soon it gets kind of sloppy. The goal was to have a big space to work, and that was one of my primary objectives here. My workshop is not always this clean. I cleaned it just because John is here. Usually what happens is I'll start a project, I'll be working on it. The tools that I'm using right then will stay right where I put them. When it gets to the point where I can't find my X-Acto knife, that's when I start putting things away. Or if I pick my tool, use it, and I only have one purpose for it, I'll put it away. These are all things I do so that I can work a little faster, better, and that's what I'm trying to do, is get things done. I always use something like this. This is a drawer organizer from 30 years ago. You can still buy something like this. This one has a lot of little spots which are good for the trucks that I'm using. The project I'm working on right now is to kit bash a brass engine into a YV engine that was there from about 1907 to 1915. So it will never operate on the layout because my layout is 1939. So it's going to go straight from here to the paint shop into a display cabinet, and I get to check off another model. I've never kit bashed a brass engine before, so this has been a learning experience. At this point, I've added wood to the sides, cleaned it all up. The smokestack is 3D printed, added some more details, replaced some details. The model that I'm working on is this one right here. This is number 26. And so at this point, I'm getting pretty close to being ready to paint. I had to completely replace the tender. The tender they had was, well, the engine is an old Pennsylvania Railroad engine. So everything you see in gray was 3D printed. What I'm doing now, the very next step will be to add Archer rivets to replicate the rivets on the tender. What I do on a project like this is I initially look at photos. In this particular case, I've got maybe a dozen photos. Some of them are when it was abandoned, some were earlier. So I picked this particular one, and those are the details I'm replicating. I will then go through and figure out what do I need to buy. I don't like to get into a project and then have to stop, order something, wait a week for it to get here. So actually what I did on this project is years ago I decided I wanted to build all of the early locomotives, and I set up a chart with all the parts I needed for all of those engines. I needed these drivers, I needed these trucks, I needed these detail parts, and I ordered them all. I actually forgot about that, and I set this project aside for so long that when I decided to get back into it, I went through my stock of parts, and sure enough, I had every single part I needed for this particular model. And like I say, I don't like to get into something. If I had to stop for a week or 2 weeks, right where I'm in the midst of this project and getting a lot of enjoyment out of it, I might set it aside for another 2 years. So you'll see that I stockpile a lot of parts ahead of time. Setting this aside, this is the tools I use the most are here and here. This holder comes from Micromart. These are the pliers I use all the time. The ones I use, I always put them back in the same spot. I'm looking for round nose pliers, they're right here. If I'm looking for flush cutters, they're right here. So I'd never put them back in the wrong spot because I want to reach for it, get what I want, and get the job done. Other parts I have, or other tools I have, are right here. There's a lot of files. These are different grades of files. The finest here, middle grade, the most coarsest grade, tweezers, X-Acto knife, one with a different blade. I tried this one time. I bought one of these. This is a surgical scalpel. I bought a whole bunch of blades for it. I don't like it as well as an X-Acto knife. There's some people who like them better. They think they cut a finer line. I don't know. I use it when I need to cut something off and I don't care about it that much. I should just throw it away. Way too many screwdrivers. One of my current projects right now is I have a neighbor that is into woodworking, and he makes cutting boards out of all these different kinds of woods. He glues them together. And he agreed to take on a job for me, and I'm going to have him build a new one of these that's stepped up. I can get all my screwdrivers in order so that when I want a Phillips, I pull up a Phillips and it's not the straight blade. Same thing, I've got too many files, not enough holes, so I will replace this whole thing. Right here, I do a lot of styrene. I do not use wood unless I'm building a bridge. For me, building with wood and using white glue, it takes way too long. I don't have the patience to let wood dry. So styrene, this is MEK. This will dry in about 2 seconds. 5 seconds and you can handle it. A lot of people like to use a little brush. I don't like to pick up a brush. I like to get the parts together and put a drop of MEK on them. Just so that doesn't get knocked down, I bought this little holder. This will be replaced with a beautiful wood holder one of these days. Zap, I'm in California in the Bay Area. We do not have humidity. So this stays open. People say, do you put this in a jar and put a top on it? I've never heard anybody need to do that. This bottle is probably a year old. It's been sitting out here. It still works, still bonds things together. Up here, the idea here was, let's get this higher, and so this stuff is easy to reach for and find. At this end are mainly liquids and so forth. Here is a flat varnish. a quick dry adhesive for paper and wood. Again, I'm not very patient. This is a canopy glue. I use this a lot. If you're gluing wood to styrene or wood to resin, this works. It stays flexible, which doesn't mean that it's going to come off. What a lot of guys do, if you're building a boxcar and it has etched metal roof walk, they'll use this because otherwise the metal expands and it pops the joints. I love this stuff, but it takes a little while to dry, but it actually dries faster than white glue. I do have white glue. You know, everybody says this is the most powerful thing you're going to have in your shop. I rarely use one of these. I bought one because I felt like buying something. Yeah, I use it to grind. I guess one reason I don't use it that much is I've never kit bashed cars. I don't buy a plastic box car, cut the ends off and replace it with something else. I've never done that. I don't know how to do that. And so I have one because everybody's supposed to have one. These are angle clamps. They are, I use them a lot. Sometimes I use it as a weight to keep something down. If I'm gluing two things down, you can do something like that. I also position them like this, and I might take styrene and put it into a quarter and glue them together. You can clamp them and glue them. Other times I'll use them all kinds of lots of different things. These are similar except they're set up to have round stock in them. And so you can use like this. I will do this at times if I'm working on something. They have a lot of uses. So these are some other adhesives I use. I bought this set about a year ago. I really like it. This is the bonder. You can put a drop of that on. It's kind of like a CA, but it doesn't react and harden until you add this. So you can put a drop of this on it, take your time, get the parts together, whatever you want to do, and even put a drop between two pieces of styrene or metal and put a drop of the accelerator so it will slide in and it'll lock it in place. It's not cheap. It's about 40 bucks or so, I think, for the set. I mentioned using this stuff and having a drop of it. That's why I have a lot of these. I use a lot of these little applicator brushes. I bought them through our hobby shop. You can buy them online a lot cheaper. That's what all of this is those little applicators. I will probably go through maybe a dozen on a project, sometimes 3 or 4 a day. I use it for CA, I use it for cleaning up joints, all kinds of stuff. Up here, well, start right here. I like nice tools. I don't mind paying money for them. I've written a series of articles for model railroad hobbyists about tools. I had the same saw that everybody else has. I don't even know what the name of it was, but I hated it. The blades would snap and so forth. I went online, I found this. These are made by a very small company. They're made in the United States over in Santa Cruz. I did an article on them. This one, I actually bought this one first. And these are maybe $40 a piece, which isn't bad for a very good tool. Both of them do the same thing, except this one, when you're ready to replace the blade, you just lower that lever and it takes off the tension. You can replace the blade and you get back exactly the tension you had before. I bought this one after the article came out. The manufacturer gave me the upgraded one. Here is parts. As I mentioned before, I don't like to stop a project because I don't have parts. So these are I do a lot of resin kits also, boxcars and so forth. Most of the time, all the things you need are in the kit. But I also scratch build freight cars. And so these, for example, are never included in a kit, or if so, very rarely. But these are all air hoses, bracket grabs, brake wheels. A lot of kits have plastic brake wheels. I always replace them with brass ones. Chain, so forth. You can see the titles. Over here, I buy these by the gross. These are Tishy, AB brake sets, KC brake sets. archer rivets. And these I don't buy in advance. I buy them for a project and then I save what I didn't use. And if I'm doing another project like the tinder I just mentioned, I will use the archer rivets that are left over from another project. These drawers underneath the workbench here are for more tools. This drawer, which is the furthest from my work area, is the tools I don't use that often, although I do use toothpicks quite a bit for mixing up epoxy and things like that. These are more tools. These are tools that I don't use all the time, not as often as the tools up on the workbench itself. Clamps, lots of different kinds of clamps. These are simply clothespins that are turned around. Don't use those too often. A sliding bar clamp. It's nice, it works really well for certain situations, but these are so much faster. And I like doing things fast. Same idea as these little ones. These don't have as much spring action. This you have to be careful with. It may be so much pressure that you're going to break something. You can never have too many clamps. A pin vise. And these have 4 collets. There's 2 collets here. You take this off and there's 2 reversible collet. Everybody has these. Somebody made a suggestion that if you have 4 of them, you don't have to reverse the collets. Good idea. I bought 4. I still hate these. I do not use them. I can't throw them away, but I can't use them. And instead, going up to my other tools, this is the pin vise I use. And what it is, it slides up. You don't have to screw it. It'll go very small to a pretty good size. And it just goes right up and it'll hold a number 80 drill bit without any problem at all. Very quick, does the job. Dividers, or you can scribe circles and so forth. At the back are the tools I don't use, or I should say use rarely. A whole bunch of pliers, cutters, flesh cutters. These are all big tools. They're not modeling tools per se. More tools. These are very nice. These are reamers. And what happens sometimes is you drill a hole and it needs to be just a little bit bigger. Instead of trying to find another drill bit, you stick this in, give it a few twists, and it'll make the hole just slightly bigger. Drill bits. I bought an entire case. I added a little cheat sheet at the top because I don't want to reach for a drill bit that is a number 47. I want a drill bit that might be a 0.076 inch drill bit. When I'm looking for something the particular drill bit, I will know the size of the hole. I won't know the number. And so I'll say, okay, I want something that's a 0.082. That's a 45. Now I can come down and get a 45. Most of these have never been used. But when you do need them, you want the right drill bit. Okay, here's my small drill bits, number 61 through an 80. I like these cases. They don't last a long time. They last maybe 5 years, and they'll get to the point where this slides back on its own, which that's when I throw them away. I do not like the ones where you open the case and you try to put the drill bit in a little bitty hole. Again, I add a cheat sheet because I don't care if it's a number 80 or a number 79. I want a drill bit for a piece of wire which is 15 thousandths. So if it's a 15 thousandths wire, I want a number 78, and then I can slide out a number 78. I leave it open like that on the workbench as long as that drill bit is out. When I'm done with it, I put the drill bit back, and that way it keeps them all in order. I will never ever take out one drill bit and then another one. When that happens, I pull out this gauge. This is how you find out what size drill bit is. You can't measure it. So if it fits through the hole, if it fits through that hole, it's a number 71. If it doesn't, maybe it's a 72. It took me a long time before I finally got one of those. Here's the same thing for the big set of drill bits. Now also I have these drill bits. These are carbide drill bits. These are not cheap. I mean, they're not super expensive, but the advantage is I can use them in a drill press. They will not sit there and wobble while they're trying to start the hole, but they are very brittle. And so if you have any sideways pressure at all, they'll break. I have a color code Once again, my little cheat sheets. These are listed by a number 80. My little thing broke apart. This is the kind of case they come in if you buy a whole case, or either a case of them or 10 of them the same number. So a number 80 is blue, and it's a 0135. So if I'm looking for the 76, I come up here, here's a 76, so forth. Talking about drill bits and carbide bits, I buy these tin packs, same little box. There's, and I've already, one's replaced that I've already taken out of there. The little bitty bits like 80s, 79s, I will buy 2 or 3 boxes at a time. I don't want to get into the position where I'm afraid to use it and break it and not have a replacement. So the bigger ones, I don't break those that often, but I'm conservative in that way. For the regular bits, I have same problem. Number 80s, you might break it, or I've had situations where I'm using it and I'm not getting chips. And I finally think, well, maybe the thing is dull. Take it, throw it away, and replace it. So these are replacement drill bits for everything through from 61s to 80s. I have this little piece of paper in here so that if I pull out the bag of number 68s, take one out, I know where I can put it back in. I have a little reminder. I get these from Drill Bit City. They're online. They do good service. Their bits are good. I mean, they're sharp. I bought drill bits one time from a company, and I had the same problem. Brand new drill bit, and I wasn't getting any chips. And so I took out my tin power magnifiers, looked at it, and it was a number 80 or number 79, a very small drill bit, and the whole tip was broken off. That's how it was sharpened, but just breaking them. So I got in touch with the seller, and he offered to send my money back, which meant that all of his were that way, and he knew it. So that's why I started going to Drill Bit City. And when I'm getting low, you know, like that one, I've got probably maybe 6 or 7. When I'm down to 3 or 4, I'll order some. And then at that time, I'll go through all of them and say I need 3 packs of 80s and so forth. Okay, this drawer looks like it's a drawer of styrene. It is, but not what you might think. This is leftover styrene. And so this is what I use when I'm looking for a scrap. I might be looking for a scrap of something to make a little jig out of, or I cut a bunch of stuff up and it was the wrong size, but I didn't feel like throwing it away. I have no idea, scribe styrene. So this is the kitchen drawer with all the old stuff in it. Okay, this last drawer is truly scraps. This is the stuff I'm throwing away. And again, you can see I've taken stuff out to mix epoxy on, for example. But what this has another purpose. One is I can sweep my cutoffs and so forth into this drawer. The other is that I have, on occasion, thrown something away, and the next day I'm looking for the small part, and I thought, oh, I think I threw it away. So this is kind of like the trash drawer on a computer. You throw it away or delete something, and 2 weeks later you go back in there and you realize you deleted something you wanted to keep, and you can find it. So there are little cutoffs, all kinds of stuff. Things I've used, maybe stuff that's so small that I didn't want to put it in the trash can because it would fall through, so forth. I clean this out maybe once every 3 years. In fact, that was a jig I just built the other day for doing something. I wanted to put it on an angle to hold it while I glued something to it. So from these drawers, let's move down to these drawers. This is another one of these project trays. I was using it for the project I'm working on right now. It's also one that I was using for some flat cars that I was building. So I've got parts left over from there. I'm still building flat cars, and so I have not cleaned this out. Some styrene that I was using for some other projects and so forth. Going down to the next drawer, this is one of two drawers that I have for brass wire from Detail Associates. This I kept in the packages, and I have, these are 15-inch Rubbermaid drawer organizers. So there's 3 packages in each drawer. I have the sides of the drawers labeled, and so this is 6 thousandths, 8 thousandths, and 10 thousandths. The next one is going to be 12 thousandths, 15, and 18, for example. We go on to the next drawer is the rest of the brass wire plus some flat stock. What I will do on these is when I see that I'm getting low, I'll get another package and then load it all into a single package so I don't have 3 packages of 46 thousandths stock. Hey, we talked about brass wire. Let's talk about styrene, strip styrene to start out with. For years I had a little box with various sizes of strip wood in it. It worked out fine, but it was hard to, it was in the same spot and I had to get down on my knees to see it. So I built this out of, again, 15-inch Rubbermaid cases. It starts out by 1x2s, 1x3s, and so forth. I have the same labels up here so that I can look down on them. The labels that are inside also have the actual size, because sometimes what will happen is you'll take a piece of strip wood out and you'll cut part of it off and you're using it and you want to keep the rest, not throw it into the drawer with the scraps, but you can't remember where you got it. You can take your calipers and say, okay, it's 11 thousandths thick, so it has to be one of these, and so it's a 1x8. The ends give the range 1x3 to 1x8. So when I'm working, I can look here and say I want a 2x6, and it's going to be in this drawer. So this works out really well. We talked about strip styrene. I also have a need for regular sheet styrene. So this is all plain styrene. This part right here is clear. All the rest is regular. And then I have another box of scribe styrene. Same idea, car siding at the back. This is all V-groove. And I use a lot of V-groove siding for boxcars, for example. What I'll do is, let's look for 40 thousandths. There's 30, 30, 30, 50, 40 thousandths right there. And so that is a package of stuff that I've already cut up. And behind it are unopened packages. So it looks like I actually need to buy some 40 thousandths. But that keeps me from cutting up stuff, you know, and throwing it away and so forth. So this is ABS. There's sheet wood in here, plywood, siding, roof material, so forth, shingles. So this is you can use the same way of storing the flat styrene as other building materials like this, as long as they're about the same size. One of the things I really worked on in the design of my shop was to have a lot of storage space. I built a lot of storage space and I added more storage space several times. But again, I think it really works if you can find what you want and you can stockpile what you need. So these are other parts and so forth, such as screws in 256 and 348 sizes. Those are the 2 sizes that you use with trucks. Figures. I have a lot of figures that I never used. I should throw them all away because the layout is done, but I just haven't got up the nerve yet. It's like throwing away little people. But there's couplers, markers, other trucks, some jigs, track working stuff, so forth. The next cupboard over is bulk supplies. This is passenger car parts that I'm going to build all the YV passenger cars someday. Things like alcohol, more toothpicks, building all the cabooses, so forth. So for projects that are further out, I don't use the drawer organizers. I'll have bins. I mentioned, for example, that I want to build all the YV freight cars. What I did is I went through and listed every single car, what kind of trucks they needed, and then bought all the trucks I need, one shot. And I do part of this because I'm paranoid that a company that I want to use their trucks, and these are excellent trucks. These are Tahoe Model Works trucks, and they make the size what I wanted, some 5-foot wheelbase arch bars and 5.5-foot wheel arch bars, that I would run out, or that he would go out of business. So I bought all the ones I needed. Same thing with Grant Line brake sets. I need these for all the box cars. The YV used, they didn't use the bigger ones. These are narrow gauge, or they're Westinghouse. So they're a little bit smaller. They fit my prototype. I have about 40 resin kits stashed under my workbench. I haven't built one for quite a while because I've been building YV stuff. But you know, one of these days I'll say, I want a break. I want to do something different. I want to build one of these cars. I did the same thing. I went through my list of kits and bought all the trucks I will ever need for these 40 resin kits, plus extra wheel sets because I've switched to the narrow wheel sets. It's like those. I mentioned earlier that I built a little spreadsheet with all the parts I need to build the rest of the YV locomotives. And here's those parts. There's all kinds of parts in here. You know, like some more stacks and so forth. So actually I had these all in a box. When I started on my current project, I found that box, went through and indexed them, and that's when I realized I bought all the parts several years ago that I need. A couple last comments. One, you need to be able to see stuff. I didn't use these when I was younger. I do now. I also use reading glasses. And these are number 5s. I also have a set of number 10s. But number 10s, I mean, these work fine. I don't have any problems with the light and so forth, glare. But in the number 10s, you have to be so close to what you're seeing that your head's down on your toolbox. And also, good lights. I like task lights. These are all incandescents. I know I should be using LEDs, but I've used these for years, and they just work well for me. So I've got 2 over here, one for my drill press, and another over here for my lathe and so forth. So with that, I know this is a lot of expensive tools, but keep in mind that I acquired these over a 40-year period. And so over the years, as I found more needs, I would buy a tool if that tool would help me do a task that I had to do. And do it quicker, and then I had the same tool that I can use on future projects. So just keeping that in mind. It's not something you can do in you know, even several years. My advice is, when you need a tool, try to buy the best one you can find. My tweezers, I mentioned before, they're, I think, maybe $15, $20. They're jewelry tweezers. They have a very, very fine touch. You can pick up a hair on a piece of glass. You can buy cheaper ones, but they aren't going to do the same job. They might have a bit higher pressure, or the tips don't come together. So I would rather spend $15 for a pair of tweezers, and this pair of tweezers I've had it for at least 30, 35 years. So that's 50 cents a year. So with that, my goal is to kind of show you some things that you can think about that let you work faster, take better time of even 15, 20 minutes a day, 30 minutes a day. If you have your tools where you need them, you have the parts you need, you know where the parts are, you're not cleaning off the workbench in order to be able to start a project. You're picking up where you left off the day before. The more that you can get done, the more you get out of the hobby, the more pleasure you have. And that's why we have hobbies, whether it's golf or model railroading or whatever. It's to have pleasure and enjoy life. And I hope I've given you some ideas that help you that way.